Back to our leading story this hour. The rape and murder of 6-year-old Amantle Samane has yet again brought into sharp focus the level of crime and violence children are exposed to and are victims of in South Africa. Let's bring in Kavya Swaminathan, who is with the Tears Foundation. Kavya, it's I want to say a pleasure talking to you, but not on this subject. Devastating story, and you've been on the line with us for some time now. Hopefully you would have heard some of what came out of that interview with the aunt of this little girl who was found murdered yesterday in Soweto.
Honestly, it's such a tragic story. And I think what makes it sadder is that this is like one in so many cases that we're actually seeing all across the country. And my heart really goes out to the family and to everyone else involved. It's not something I want anyone to be in that position. I can't imagine myself in that position. It's just a really difficult time. Yeah.
Yeah, it's just such a horrific story. And, you know, you talk about the horror of this being one of so many stories. In fact, just this month, the DA, just a few days ago, in fact, calling for urgent action. They've collated some of the crime statistics and they've talked about South Africa's escalating child rape crisis. Some of these shocking statistics, which I'm sure you are privy to as well. Over 106,000 rape cases, 22,000 sexual assault cases, all involving children, have been reported, and I think that's the important caveat here, have been reported over the last 6 financial years.
Yeah, it's honestly, it's a really shocking statistic, and I want it to be shocking. I think as a country, we've become, I wouldn't say compliant, but I think we have become desensitized to instances of gender-based violence and those kind of crimes. I think we feel so inundated. I think people have this idea, and I can find myself falling into that trappings of what, as well as you open up a news feed and it's just another case and it's another case and it's another case. And I understand putting that much energy and time into these cases and trying to feel for every single one is difficult. But honestly, this has to be a wake-up call in some degree. And look, South Africa is not completely underperforming in these sections, but I mean, we have great legislation. We have social workers who care and are trying their best. DSD is trying. But the truth is everyone is underfunded and understaffed. And you have like 3 social workers attending to large districts where you can't get to everyone. And that is, I think, where we need to pull together. I think in cases like this, we always say, oh, police need to do better, or social work needs to do better, or teachers need to do better, whatever it might be. But the truth is, collectively, we need to do better, especially when children are involved. So it's a collective and a holistic effort. We need justice reform. We need follow through from the police. We need more funding. We need all of these things, but they need to work as like one greater entity, if that makes sense.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. You know, you talk about us opening the news feed, and I can absolutely relate with that. We see story after story involving gender-based violence. All of them are shocking, perhaps more especially so when they are stories that involve children, as is the case with this little girl, Amantle Samane, in Orlando East in Soweto. The question, I suppose, is, you know, what's the level of shock that we need for us to jump into the urgency that is certainly clearly required with the scourge of gender-based violence?
Honestly, I think we have reached that level and passed it, like, as a threshold. I think just children being hurt or people being hurt or someone's rights being taken advantage of in of itself should be shocking enough that we take a step back and be like, we need to do more. But like when it comes to children, it's this, like, if you think about vulnerable communities that can be taken advantage of, children are as vulnerable as it gets. They're essentially these tiny little malleable sponges who are just observing the world and soaking everything up. Like, this is their lived reality, right? You're creating a blueprint for the rest of their lives. And to take advantage of someone who is in that position and realizing that you're creating a framework for the rest of their lives. And it's not just creating survivors. I hate that I just said that, because that's what it is. But it's also, you're perpetuating a cycle of abuse. You're teaching people that this is okay, that justice doesn't mean anything, that people can do whatever they want and there are no consequences, that people can take advantage of you, or this is how you're supposed to be treated. And as a nation, I don't think those are the kind of people we want to be bringing up. That's not what we want to be represented by. So it is difficult, but returning to your question, I think we've passed the threshold of shocking, and action should have been taken a long time ago.
And it's an issue that is, it's linked to so many of our other challenges in the country, isn't it? Because if we think about how vulnerable children are in particular communities, I mean, it's children who perhaps have parents who have to leave for work really early in the morning, or who don't come back from work until much later at night. Children who perhaps are in the care of neighbors. So our unemployment crisis is a part of this. Our transport crisis is a part of it. The lack of enough visible policing in our communities. There are so many different interlinking challenges that we face in a country, in our country, that put our children at risk.
No, that's completely true. And we don't have uniform basing systems when it comes to teachers or people taking care of our children. You hear so many stories of creche workers or teachers taking advantage of students or people in their care. And I've always said this, and this is very random, but because you mentioned neighbors and strangers, I think when we think about protecting our children, we talk about external factors, right? Don't talk to that stranger over there. Make sure you're with someone you know. But in doing that, we've kind of created like a bubble in a different kind of way. Most cases involving children, you'll find that the perpetrator is someone very known to the child, someone close to them, someone with easy access, and someone that comes across as very non-threatening, especially in like long-term, like grooming cases and things like that. So it's a level of awareness, and there's so many things involved in this. It's not just the police and all the amenities in government, but it's also society and how we think in general. The fact is, despite the fact that we have such a high prevalence of gender-based violence, we don't really talk about it meaningfully. Not always. People are still uncomfortable. People still shy away. You can't really report it to work. People don't take survivors' stories seriously, and people are constantly finding excuses and being dismissive. And that's what we're doing to adults, let alone if you have a child come up to you and disclose something. People laugh it off, people blame children for the language that they use and things like that. And it's really, it's sad to see, because it is like the little changes I think that each individual person can make is like a contributing factor to overall societal change. So I think people need to hold other people accountable. People need to be more open. And I think awareness and education, children and adults alike, we need to start talking about it. We need to educate people, and we need to make people aware of their own rights, especially when it comes to children. You need to be talking to them about sex, and not just in the don't do that, you could get pregnant, but in the if someone touches you this way, you even as a child have boundaries. Consent is so important. Some children don't want to be hugged by strangers. A parent should never force them to. And that's like a little thing, and it seems inconsequential. But a hug is one boundary, but 2 steps down, you have a much bigger boundary that you're essentially creating a pathway and saying it's okay for someone to cross it.
Yeah, absolutely. Such an important conversation, and I'm not sure how to take it forward, Kavya. But I'll end our conversation with just a deeper look into the statistics I mentioned at the start of our discussion. 106,000 rape cases reported. That's in the 6 last financial years. And if we drill down into those numbers, on average, this is over 1,400 rape cases per month, roughly 48 rape cases per day. I mean, these numbers are absolutely shocking. And as I said, I'm not sure that there's any way of ending this interview on a way that gives any of us hope, but it is certainly a crisis situation. Let me thank you for your time this afternoon. Kavya Swaminathan is with the Tears Foundation as we continue to track this horrific story in Orlando East.